everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As you can see from the title of this video, this is going to be the second episode of my new Thriving in Spite of series. Because this is still a newish series, pretty new, it's only episode 2, I just wanted to give a little bit of a primer. So this series is meant to be a more podcast style videos where I talk about topics that might bring some challenges to your life, might make life a little bit more difficult, but we're still thriving in spite of. So today, as you can see from the title, I want to talk about loss. And I'm primarily going to be, at least as far as my own experiences, be talking about the loss of my father. My dad died 5 years ago, and it's not really something I talk about too much, at least not outside. Even like amongst my immediate family, I don't discuss it that much. And it's definitely not something I discuss that much amongst like friends or colleagues or anything like that. But the whole reason I want to do this series is to talk about topics that are probably something you don't talk about as openly, but things that maybe we should be talking about as openly, or will just be able, people will be able to get a perspective that maybe they haven't heard, or people will hear this and be like, oh yeah, I relate to that, and kind of find comfort in knowing that someone else is going through the same thing that you are going through. I also thought that this video would be appropriate during these times. Unfortunately, because of the world we now live in, a lot of people are experiencing losing family members, losing close friends, and it's really unfortunate, but it's just the reality. I mean, that's a reality in day-to-day life anyway, but I feel like it's now just that much worse with everything going on. The first thing I guess I should talk about is a little bit about my experience losing my father. As I said, my dad died in November 2015. At the time, he was actually in Ghana, and he had left for Ghana earlier that summer, so he had been there for a while, and his plan was to just live there. I guess backtracking a little bit more, my dad has basically been sick my whole life. He had his first stroke when I was 3 years old, so in preschool, and I kind of remember that time. Obviously I was only 3, so I don't remember that much, but I do remember visiting him in the hospital. I remember that like it took him a while to get better, and I remember like his friends coming over and things like that. But he did, for the most part, I won't say recover, because you don't really ever fully recover from strokes. Strokes are pretty serious, but he did get a lot better, and then he unfortunately had another stroke, which is hard for me because part of what made me hold some resentment towards him is because I felt like he kind of gave up, which now looking back, it's like if you have 2 strokes or even more than that, because I think he actually ended up having 3, I can understand why you would give up. So I think I should have given him more grace, but that definitely was something that upset me. It's like he didn't want to get better. Yeah, and I'll go more into like the things I regret and things like that later. But yeah, so my dad, basically my whole life, he has been sick. So it wasn't, when he died, it wasn't like a complete shock, which I know some people lose people and it's just like out of nowhere, which I can't imagine. I feel like that's even more heartbreaking. But he was getting a little bit older, and then yeah, he was sick. So, and even before he died, like a few days prior, we knew that he wasn't doing well, but then actually we thought that he was getting better, and then it was kind of like sudden that he didn't. When he died, I was actually in my first year of law school, about 3-4 weeks away from my first semester of exams, so it was not the best timing. That's kind of seems to be what happens in life though, like things happen and not the best times. You just kind of have to deal with it. So unfortunately, I did have to deal with it. I still took my exams. I never really thought about dropping out or anything like that, taking a semester off, because it was just at the time easier for me to kind of, this might sound insensitive, but in a way kind of pretend it wasn't happening, because it just allowed me to move forward a little better. I remember when it happened, I was very, very upset. For a while, I just pretty much, like, we were still living with my mom at the time. I pretty much just stayed in the basement, and like the only person I spoke to was Corey. And keep in mind, we started like officially dating April of that year, so we weren't even together for a year, but he was very much my emotional support. And looking back, it's crazy to think that like we were still not dating for very long, but he was very supportive of me, and it was just very nice throughout the whole thing, which anyone you're dating should be nice, but I'm sure you can understand how if you're newly dating someone, something like that extreme happens in their life, it can be a little bit difficult. But he was really great throughout it. So yeah, I never really thought about dropping out of law school, it was hard. It was just easier to kind of pretend like it hadn't happened, especially because for months prior, my dad was in Ghana, so it's not like I was seeing him. So it wasn't like I went from seeing him every day to just him being gone. I was already used to not seeing him regularly, and so it was just kind of easier to think that, oh yeah, he's still there, or just not think about it at all, to be honest. So I guess that goes to my kind of second topic that I want to talk about today, was, for me at least, and I don't know if people have the same experience, it was kind of uncomfortable for me to talk about with others. As I said, my best coping mechanism was to kind of, as much as possible, forget what was even going on, because I just didn't have the mental capacity to like fully think about it and think about things I regretted, think about things that I know I did wrong, and think about things that I know he did wrong that we just never got the opportunity to discuss. So it's just easier to kind of put it all aside. So I remember when I first went back to school, once it happened, I had to obviously tell my professors, because I actually found out like I was leaving. So I still work throughout school part-time. So I was leaving my morning class, I think. Yeah, so that day I actually only had classes in the morning. So I was leaving and going to work when I found out, and like I was driving at the time. So I had to tell my boss at the time that I wasn't gonna come in, obviously, because that happened. And then I think either that night or the next day, I had to email my professors and explain. So my one professor, which like I will say now, I don't think, and I thought this back then too, I told him what happened, and I think he was trying to be, obviously I don't think he had malicious intentions at all. I think he was trying to be supportive and nice. So he ended up telling my whole section, or I guess his class. The way law school works, for your first year is you're split into sections, and was it first year or just first semester? It's crazy because it's only been 2 years since I graduated. It's like, it feels like a different life to me. So yeah, I think just first semester they split everyone up into like what are called sections, and you follow that section throughout your whole first semester throughout your classes. So my section was all in this class, a torts class, and the professor actually told everyone and like had everyone sign a card, which is really nice and thoughtful. But at the same time, I obviously would have told the people that I wanted to know, but if it was up to me, I would have preferred not everyone knowing. And that's just kind of the kind of person I am. And this is actually something I'm working on, because I think it is a flawed personality trait. At least for people that are close to you, you should be okay with them caring about you and feeling sad for you and wanting to be there for you. But something that I've definitely developed as I've gotten older, and I'm not sure why, is I don't want people to like think I'm a burden to them. I know, and it's so silly, because the people that are close to me that I would tell something like that, I know they wouldn't find me to be a burden, but I have this some kind of strange mental block in my head that like, oh, I know everyone has problems, so I don't want to make my problem their problem. And I wonder if you can relate to that, because I think I'm not going to say a lot of people, but I'm sure some people have that same strange thinking. And it is something I'm working on, because I don't necessarily think it's healthy. I think it was another coping mechanism I developed. So yeah, if it was up to me, I would have preferred people, not my whole section, to know. And that's mostly because I wasn't close to many of those people. Like it's sections, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how many people, but like anywhere from 50 to 100 people, like a fair amount of people. A lot of that I only knew just because we happened to be in the same section. So yeah, I remember going back, getting the letter, thought it was really nice. But then throughout like that whole day and the next week, anytime I'd run into someone, they'd be like, oh, Nicole, I'm so sorry. Which again, it's not coming from a malicious place. It's people being like normal and saying sorry for what happened. But for me, it was not a reminder I continually wanted. It was also difficult for me because that same semester, a few months beforehand, another woman in that class had actually lost her father. And I actually felt worse for her than I felt for myself, because I knew her situation was sudden. I knew that at the time she was close to her father. Obviously, everyone has family issues and things that not everyone is aware of, so I can't say that. But at the same time, in a way, I didn't want the attention on me because I felt like I didn't deserve it. That sounds so weird to even say out loud, but I think that was part of it. So yeah, I just try to navigate and kind of pretend like it wasn't happening, and I felt awkward telling people. Another thing that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about that I'm sure at least someone can relate to. So both my parents are from Ghana. In Ghanaian culture, you don't have like funerals immediately, you have them a bit later. So my dad's funeral, my mom and my sister went back to Ghana, and I actually decided not to. I don't think I was completely honest with my mom and my sister at the time. I tried to say that like it was because of school that I didn't want to go, but to be honest, like I didn't want to go because I didn't want that same experience, like being around that sadness, being around knowing he was gone. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to like pretend it wasn't happening. And so going to the funeral, which is not just like a quick thing, it's a very, the actual funeral itself, and I might be getting this wrong, the actual funeral itself is obviously like the funeral, but like it's a multiple day thing. And then obviously being around family, they know what's going on. So I just didn't want that pressure. If my sister wasn't able to go, I obviously wouldn't have made my mom go by herself, because I don't think that would have been fair. But because my sister went, I elected to stay home, and I won't say I regret it. I keep waiting until the year that I do regret it, but I don't think I do still, because I think it's what I needed at the time. We did also have a funeral for him here, and it was very, very distressing for me. I just cried the whole time, and I'm not gonna cry in this video because I actually am filming this during my work break, so it'd be awkward to like go back to work teary-eyed. But yeah, I remember even during the funeral, like when, I don't know why they did this either, they like put pictures of him and stuff, and that was just very upsetting to me. Yeah. And I imagine that's the case for anyone that you go to a funeral that someone was close to you, like whether or not you see pictures, it is upsetting. I also find death to be, I'm not afraid of dying. I know a lot of people are afraid of dying. If anything, I'm afraid of my loved ones dying. I think that's harder when you still are on earth and then someone you loved is gone versus you being the one that's gone. Obviously, like I want to experience life, but I think if I had to pick one or the other, I would rather go before the people I love go. Yeah, I don't think funerals are easy for anyone. Maybe if you go to a funeral and you're not like actually close and you're just going there to support someone, it's not as difficult for you, but it was my dad. So whether or not we had a great pass or if we resolved our issues, it was difficult for me. And I guess I said I would talk about this later, and I think this is a good time to talk about it. So my relationship with my dad was pretty good when I was younger. There are a lot of things going on in our family that when you're younger, you just don't really know. And I'm not gonna go into detail for that because that's not just like my experience and not like fair to share my whole family's experience. But yeah, when you're younger, you just don't know exactly what's going on. So I was pretty close to him. He was actually a taxi driver most of my life, up until he got too sick that he couldn't work. And I remember in like elementary school, they had bring your daughter to work day or bring your like, yeah, all those like bring your child to work day things they had. And so one day I went to work with him. Where I got this, I don't know. I must have found it on a show or something. And since he was a taxi cab driver, I wrote up this like contract that if I went with him and like how much money he got that he had to give to me and like these percentages and all these things, like I don't know where I got it from. I was a very interesting child. So I remember writing that and like giving it to him, and he just laughed at me. But one memory that I have that is such a weird one to hold on to is during that, we went to like one little spot at maybe his lunch break, I don't remember exactly, and he was like chatting with all his friends and he was laughing so much. And I remember thinking like, wow, like I never really see him that happy, which is kind of sad. It's sad, but also like I feel like kind of makes sense because even me, you know, like when you're with a certain group of friends, like you might just be more playful in like a certain way with that group of friends because that's just kind of sometimes what happens. But I just remember seeing him and thinking like, wow, he doesn't look that happy at home, which maybe was the case, who knows. So as I got older, I learned more about what was going on, and I definitely started to resent my dad for the things he did, for maybe part of that things I'm not going to talk about. Also, the reasons I resented him is because I felt like he kind of gave up on himself, which now looking back, like it was understandable. I resented him also because I felt like he wasn't a good father figure to me. I shouldn't say father figure. I felt like he wasn't a good father to me, and I kind of still stand by that. There are things that he just didn't do as a dad. Some of that is cultural. that it's just not expected in his culture. But I think also at the same time, like, you're allowed to go outside your culture, so I'm not gonna let him use that completely as an excuse. But the one regret I do have is kind of, instead of just resenting him and honestly being mean to him, just kind of like acting like he wasn't there when he actually was there, I could have just talked to him about it. And I think that would have been a lot more productive and would have allowed us to mend our relationship, and maybe he would have changed how he acted. But unfortunately, I never got that chance. So that it does suck. I'm gonna be honest, it sucks to know that I didn't have that chance, and I should have taken the chance as soon as he was going to Ghana, because he wasn't doing well anyway. And when he was leaving for Ghana, I didn't know the next time I was going to see him regardless. So yeah, that was pretty much when I should have addressed him. I was still fairly young, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace. If this had happened now, I want to think that by the time I was maybe 23, 24, I would have said something. I'm now 27. But when he died, I just turned 22. So I was still pretty young, but I think old enough to recognize that I probably should have had some conversations with him that I didn't. Another regret that I have that might seem trivial to you, but to me it is greater, because he was a taxi cab driver and I went to school in a very, very rich neighborhood where most people's parents, either like the mom was a stay-at-home mom and the dad was like a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, whatever, very, very wealthy, that they had quote unquote prestigious jobs, which now I just don't even care what someone does. I think a lot of people with those quote unquote prestigious jobs are actually poor people. Not poor in like money, but not nice people. I was honestly embarrassed that he was a taxi cab driver. I remember when I started to get embarrassed, because like if he was dropping me off at school, I wanted him to drop me off away. I would like I would go to lengths to make sure that no one saw me, because I found it to be embarrassing. I do regret that. I think it shouldn't have mattered. No one ever said anything. And I remember when people would find out, like we were little kids, they'd be like, oh, that's cool, like that's fun. Like no one ever said anything negative. So I don't know why, for whatever reason, I was embarrassed about it. But that's something I also have a big regret about, because I know he knew that I was embarrassed, and I can't imagine how that feels when your own child, you're doing something to provide for them, doing what you can. It's not like he had a college degree, not even a high school degree. I don't even know if he finished middle school. So it's not like he could have done much more. So yeah, I can't imagine what that feels like, and I feel very bad for that, and I wish I could have apologized, because I never did, and I should have, like as soon as I got old enough to realize that that was wrong. And I realized years and years ago, but I just never thought to apologize, and I should have. So that's another thing that I regret. I don't know, if you regret things for people that you've lost, I think that's normal. I unfortunately don't think you can just have a perfect relationship with someone while they're quote unquote earth side. That's unfortunate about our world. Our world is corrupt and broken, and there's nothing we can do about that. But at the same token, I would say, like, you don't know if you have tomorrow. So if there's someone that means a lot to you, and you know in your head that you've done things that you regret, that if you weren't ever to see them again, if they were to pass, or you were to pass, and you're thinking, wow, like I would hate to miss the opportunity to address that with them or say sorry to them, my advice to you is to take it now, like literally today, because you just never know. And yeah, let's try to avoid as many regrets as possible. It's not fun living with regrets. If you're living with them already and there's something you can do about it, I don't think you should focus on that and let that ruin your life, because that's also not healthy. I mentioned the regrets I have, but I don't think about them day in, day out, because I know that's not going to be productive for me. All I can do is tell myself, now I learned that lesson, let's not have it happen again with other people. And as I'm saying this, I can think of actually someone that I need to apologize for and hopefully mend things so that I don't regret it. So I'm sure, like, if you're listening to this, take a second and actually think about if there's anyone you want to reach out to, because I am 100% sure every single person listening to this, watching this, whatever, can think of at least one person that you want to apologize for or mend a relationship with. That's also to say though, sometimes you can apologize to someone and say sorry to someone, but you don't have to continue that relationship. Sometimes, like, if a relationship's toxic, it's toxic, that's fine. But at least say sorry and let go of that regret for yourself. Get to the level where you've let go of any regret that you would have for yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to completely mend a relationship and have a great relationship again, because some people are supposed to go in and out of your life. Before closing out this video, because I want to close out with tips, and trying to avoid regrets with people as much as possible is definitely my number one tip. Another tip I have is to kind of welcome reminders about the people. The people you've lost. I know I spoke a lot about how, for me, my coping mechanism was to just pretend like it didn't happen. And at the time, that's what I needed to do, I guess. It probably still wasn't healthy, but I did it. But right now, I try to not be afraid of reminders, because I think that's good. Like, I don't want to forget my dad completely. There are things already that I can tell I'm forgetting, like childhood memories that I did really enjoy, and I try to like relive those memories in my mind, because I want to be able to, when I'm older, still like remember my dad. I don't want him to just be such a little part of my memory that I'm just like, yeah, I don't even know who he was, or just only remember the super bad things or the memories that I didn't like about him. So for example, if I have a dream where my dad shows up on the dream, it can be a little distressing when you wake up. It's a little bit sad, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, wow, that was at least good that I got to see him in my dream, because it's not like I can see him in real life. So I try and sit with that and be okay with it. If I see something, or if something reminds me of a negative memory, I don't try and sit with it. I don't try and dwell on that, because he's already gone. So there's no point in like trying to make myself resent him more. Like, that doesn't make any sense, or be angry with him more. He's already gone. And I guess that'd be a tip to you. If someone did something to you and they're already gone, don't waste time like sitting and like replaying those bad memories and like just building up resent towards that person, because what is it doing for you? They're gone. It's not doing anything for them. You can't have them come to you and apologize. There's nothing, you can't solve it at that point. So it's not beneficial at all. So if something reminds me negatively of him, I'm like, okay, yes, that memory's there, I move on. I think that's the most I want to say. Again, I am trying my best not to cry in this video, because I just don't want to. Not that crying's bad, I just don't want to cry right now. So I'm gonna close out this video now. I think it's gonna be a bit shorter than my first episode of Thriving in Spite of, but I think that's okay. I want these videos to like vary, just like podcast lengths vary. I hope this video was helpful if you've experienced any type of loss, not just the loss of your father or loss of a parent, but even like grandparents, close friends. No loss is, I don't think you can like one up people's losses. It's really just how close a person is to you. Sometimes even losses that aren't family will hurt you more than losses that are family. So it really depends. But I do hope sharing my experience was helpful to you. I hope that the tips I gave you was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me. Bye.